Hello there, my name's Michael Sanders and I'm going to show you some quick and clever acrylic techniques using the opaque method based on these two sketches. And I'm going to transfer the first sketch, which is in colour, onto my board now. It's been tinted already with a dilute orange, so I've got a coloured ground on. And the first of my sketches is a colour sketch. The second one is in pen and ink, and it's just a bit more detail of the villa that I'm going to be transferring. And I'm using a synthetic bristle brush for this technique, which is an oil painting technique. And I'm using dilute ultramarine and burnt sienna and putting tonal values in first. So I know this is my dark range of hills, and the center of my tower is going to be somewhere here. And when I've got some of the composition in thin layers, I'm going to start adding more opaque, but it's just setting the tones where I want them. So I'm just transferring this, not using an awful lot of detail at this stage. All I want really is to block in the masses, and then we'll have a look at the more detailed bit of the building. I'm going to work up to a little zigzag road coming down here, and a mass of flowers, a mass of poppies. And if you look on the sketch, I've just denoted where some of these would be. They're not all individual flowers, they're a mass. And I think that's enough now for me to stop here and start mixing up some solid colour for the next stage. So that's the sketch transferred. I've got some titanium white and some cerulean and a little ultramarine. I'm making a sky colour. What I'm going to do is put in the background and the sky and get that accurate before we start anything else. And I'm using a large brush. Now, talking about brushes and brush sizes, I'm often asked at classes that I do what size of brush. Every manufacturer uses basically a different measuring system. And so this is a size 12, but some manufacturers, this would be a size 18. I will just say that it's a synthetic bristle brush that is about an inch across. And I'm using titanium white with a little bit of cerulean blue added and a little bit of ultramarine to give me this sky blue. The brush is just damp, it's not been wetted. I've had it in my pot of water to keep it moist, and I've dried it before I mix this layer to put the sky on. I'm painting down over where I want my mountains to be, because the next step is going to be blocking those mountains in a bluey grey, and we'll put that in before we carry on with the rest of the image. So that's just a fairly bland initial colour for the sky, a very pale blue, which we'll work into again, that's fine. So I'm adding a little sap green and cerulean blue, mixing with some titanium white, and we're going to put the distant hills in. When you're using acrylic in this way, you need to remember that it's going to dry darker, and that's quite a thing to keep in mind. The acrylic I'm putting on now will dry a little bit darker than this. So when you're matching colours, it has to be kept in mind really that you're going to be getting a slightly darker effect than you're putting on. Painting around the buildings here, they're not really drawn in that accurately. I'm going to work back into those. This is a nice pale bluey green, and I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine to this and a little white. I'm using a smaller brush. This is a synthetic bristle brush. Again, it's about a ½ an inch flat brush, nice long bristles. And as soon as I finish with it, it drops into its little enamel plate on its side, a little enamel plate with water in, so that I've got a good way of keeping my brushes from drying out. Don't forget, if you don't do this, you're going to be ruining brushes. Gradually adding a little bit more green as we come down. So this blue is going into a bluey green, and when the hills and my background are applied, you notice I'm leaving some little bits of the background colour showing through. The board was painted with a thin layer of cadmium orange and white and allowed to dry before we started this, and there's a little bit of this showing through. That gives me the warmth. That will be the warmth of the image coming through here and there. And because it's the colour of the landscape, then the buildings often are built from local stone, and it all harmonises nicely with the with the painting, tying it in together. So little touches of sap green added to the white here. I'm going to wait for this area to dry, and it will only take a couple of minutes or so, and then we'll work in on the next layer and start putting in buildings quite simply where I want them to be, and then working gradually down. The main thing is to get the tonal values between the sky and the hill to be correct, and because they're distant they need to be blue. They will recede in comparison to the warm greens that are coming in down here. So the background is dryish now, and it's got a little darker, as I said. I'm using sap green with a little raw sienna and some cadmium yellow. This is a warmer colour that's coming on now because of the addition of the raw sienna and the warmer yellow, and we're putting in, this is just blocking in large areas. There's no need to have any detail at this stage. I've got the basic shape, the basic format of my composition, and I'm using a large brush. I've gone back to the 1-inch synthetic bristle brush, and these brushes, if you look after them, last for years, as long as you remember to drop them in water when they're not in use. Adding a little of the raw sienna to the mix will make this a much warmer colour, and making the brush strokes run the way that the terrain is running. So brush strokes running down the hill towards the lower side implies that that's the way the landscape is, and that's very important really. When you're painting with this oils method in acrylics, you can use the texture, you can use brush strokes, and you can make sure that your brush strokes imply the landscape. Just blocking in here, we want something dark behind where the poppies are going to go, and on the sketch the poppies are down on the right hand side, and so I'm going to darken this area and have a darker green here, and then we're going to just spend about 5 minutes while this dries mixing up some colours for the cypress trees and some of the distant hedgerows in the background, and reassessing that. But that's enough for this. Again, a couple of minutes, it'll be dry, so we'll just have a short break